Please remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell if you're as captivated by the depths of human darkness and the relentless pursuit of justice as I am. Your support helps me bring more gripping narratives like this one to life. Now, prepare yourselves. What you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a journey into the heart of a nightmare that once gripped a nation, leaving an indelible scar. This is the terrifying account of the Midnight Weaver. Portland, Oregon, in the autumn of 2005, was a city of contradictions. Its heart beat with the rhythmic hum of progressive ideals, a sanctuary for artists, foodies, and those who sought an escape from the relentless grind of conventional ambition. Old-growth forests hugged its edges, and the Willamette River, a vein of liquid silver, bisected its soul. As October painted the leaves in a riot of crimson and gold, and the first whisper of persistent rain began to scent the air, a certain melancholic beauty settled over the city, a quiet promise of winter's introspection. Yet, beneath this veneer of quirky charm and tranquil beauty, something insidious was stirring, a darkness that would soon rip through the fabric of its peaceful existence, leaving an indelible stain. The first thread of this nightmare was woven on a Tuesday, discovered by the rising sun filtering through the expansive windows of Sarah Jenkins' loft apartment in the Pearl District. Sarah, 27, a burgeoning sculptor whose works often explored themes of fragility and transformation, was found in the center of her stark, minimalist living space. Her body, almost ethereal in its stillness, lay on a hand-woven rug, framed by the raw brick walls and polished concrete floors that were hallmarks of the converted industrial building. Death had visited her with a chilling, almost artistic precision. There was no sign of struggle, no overturned furniture, no frantic chaos to suggest a fight for life. The only disruption to the pristine order was the macabre tableau itself. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, stared up at the exposed ceiling beams, reflecting a horror that had been swift and absolute. Detective Marcus Thorne, a man whose 45 years felt like 100 and whose face was a roadmap of forgotten cases and sleepless nights, surveyed the scene with a practiced, weary gaze. His partner, Lena Petrova, a sharp, analytical mind barely into her 30s, moved with a controlled efficiency, her camera clicking, documenting every grim detail. "Clean," Thorne murmured, the word tasting like ash. Too clean. The apartment's security had been top-notch, yet there was no forced entry. Sarah had likely known her killer, or the killer possessed an uncanny ability to bypass sophisticated locks. The cause of death was a single, precise stab wound to the heart, executed with a surgical skill that sent a shiver down Thorne's spine. This wasn't a crime of passion or a botched robbery. This was something far more deliberate, far more unsettling. Forensics swarmed, their blue-gloved hands searching for any anomaly, any telltale sign the killer might have inadvertently left behind. But the killer was a phantom, leaving only absence in his wake. No fingerprints, no DNA, not even a stray fiber. Except for one thing, resting delicately on Sarah's chest, almost like a morbid gift, was a small, intricately woven piece of dark red thread. It was not merely a string. It was a miniature tapestry, a tightly interlocked pattern of crimson and midnight hues, no larger than a postage stamp. Felt ancient, out of place, utterly perplexing. "What the hell is this?" Petrova whispered, zooming in with her camera. Thorne knelt, observing it through the lens of a magnifying glass. "A signature," he replied, a grim certainty in his voice. "Or a message." The local news initially treated Sarah's murder as a tragic, isolated incident. The Pearl District was gentrifying, and perhaps some lingering shadows of its past had resurfaced. The media hinted at a possible lover's quarrel gone wrong, or a random act of violence in a city increasingly grappling with the growing pains of popularity. Portlanders, generally a trusting populace, were disturbed but not yet gripped by fear. They believed in the sanctity of their peaceful bubble. Thorne and Petrova, however, knew better. The meticulousness, the lack of struggle, and that damn thread it spoke of something far more sinister, a premeditated darkness that had merely chosen Sarah Jenkins as its unfortunate debut. Less than a week later, as the first true rains began to lash the city, the illusion of safety shattered completely. Mark Thompson, a prominent architect known for his sleek, modern designs that punctuated the city's skyline, was found in his sprawling home in the affluent West Hills. His housekeeper discovered him, her screams echoing through the silent, minimalist halls. The scene was a haunting echo of Sarah's death. No forced entry, no struggle, a clean, precise kill. And there, on his chest, a second, identical piece of the dark red woven thread. The city's breath hitched. This was no isolated incident. This was a pattern. And somewhere in the misty, rain-soaked streets of Portland, a predator was weaving a terrifying narrative of his own. Thread by chilling thread, the Midnight Weaver had arrived. The discovery of Mark Thompson's body, barely a week after Sarah Jenkins, sent a jolt of ice through the heart of Portland. The initial, contained unease morphed into widespread fear, a palpable anxiety that hung in the perpetual mist and rain. The media, no longer able to frame these as isolated tragedies, exploded with sensational headlines: "The Thread Killer," "Portland's Midnight Predator," "Shadows in the City of Roses." The idyllic charm of the city began to fray, revealing a raw underbelly of terror. Citizens, once known for their open, trusting nature, now eyed their neighbors with suspicion, double-checked their locks, and avoided walking alone after dusk. Detectives Thorne and Petrova found themselves at the epicenter of a storm. The city's pressure was immense, the public clamoring for answers, the mayor demanding arrests. Yet, the killer remained maddeningly elusive. The forensics teams worked tirelessly, poring over every minute detail from both crime scenes. The woven threads, now the undeniable signature, were a particular focus. Microscopic analysis revealed them to be made of a rare, high-quality silk, dyed with organic pigments, suggesting an artisanal origin. The weave itself was intricate, almost ritualistic, hinting at a craftsman's touch, or perhaps a deeper, symbolic meaning that eluded interpretation. There was no database match, no obvious point of origin. It was as if the threads materialized from thin air. Both victims were successful, well-regarded individuals, but beyond that, the commonalities were frustratingly vague. Sarah was an artist, Mark an architect. No apparent connection in their social circles, no shared history that the police could uncover. Thorne, relying on his gut instinct honed over decades, felt a growing sense of dread. This wasn't about revenge, not a serial killer targeting a specific demographic. This felt different, more like a hunter choosing trophies, or a collector acquiring rare pieces. The lack of struggle suggested a surprise attack, or perhaps a victim rendered helpless, but the absence of drugs in the autopsies ruled out chemical incapacitation. It was a terrifying efficiency. Petrova, hunched over crime scene photos late into the night, tried to build a psychological profile. The meticulousness, the artistic arrangement of the scenes, the unique signature, it all pointed to an organized, highly intelligent individual, someone deriving satisfaction not just from the act of killing, but from the complete control and the chilling artistry of their work. "He's not just killing them, Marcus," she murmured one evening, staring at Sarah's body, perfectly centered. "He's staging them. They're part of his narrative." Thorne nodded, his gaze distant. "And we're just reading the chapters." The police department launched a massive task force, pulling in resources from across the state. Anonymous tips flooded the precinct, each one a dead end, a false lead, or the ramblings of a disturbed individual. The pressure mounted, fraying nerves and shortening tempers. Thorne found himself snapping at junior officers, while Petrova retreated further into her analytical shell, fueled by caffeine and an unshakable determination. They knew the killer was watching, enjoying the chaos, the fear he had sown. Then came the third victim. This time, the location was even more audacious. A quiet, suburban neighborhood in Lake Oswego, just south of Portland. Emily Carter, a beloved high school English teacher, was found in her meticulously kept garden, amidst her prize-winning roses. She was posed, almost delicately, as if asleep, one hand gently placed over her heart. The familiar, chilling red thread lay on her chest, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of the blooming flowers. The killer had entered a detached house in a seemingly impenetrable neighborhood and vanished without a trace. The third murder confirmed their worst fears. The killer was escalating, becoming bolder, more confident. The victims were increasingly diverse in profession and location, shattering any lingering theories about a targeted vendetta. Emily was a teacher, completely different from Sarah the artist or Mark the architect. Their only commonality, it seemed, was that they were successful, respected members of their communities. The thread, however, remained the constant, the only concrete link, and it continued to baffle them. Portland was no longer just uneasy. It was paralyzed by a creeping dread. The Midnight Weaver was no longer just a local menace. He was a national headline, a ghost in the machine, weaving a terrifying tapestry of death across the City of Roses. The hunt became desperate, a race against an unseen enemy who seemed to know their every move. The relentless rain of a Portland winter seemed to mirror the city's mood, heavy, inescapable, and profoundly bleak. The Midnight Weaver, now a grim national phenomenon, had claimed a fourth victim, pushing the fear to a breaking point. David Chun, a respected surgeon at OHSU, was discovered in his sprawling, modern condominium overlooking the city lights. Again, the chilling precision, the surgical wound, the absence of struggle, and the signature red thread. The public outcry was deafening, the pressure on Thorne and Petrova reaching unbearable levels. The FBI was called in, adding layers of bureaucracy but few new leads. The Weaver had seemingly mastered the art of vanishing. Thorne, however, had a growing, unsettling intuition. He revisited every detail, every victim, every crime scene, searching for an invisible pattern. The commonality wasn't profession, nor social circle, nor even location in the traditional sense. It was something more subtle, more abstract. He pored over the forensic reports on the threads, the only tangible link. The silk, the dyes, the intricate weave. Petrova, meanwhile, was buried in cold cases, looking for similar signatures, any historical precedent for such a specific calling card. One night, staring at a satellite map of Portland, Thorne noticed something peculiar about the crime scenes. They weren't geographically clustered, but when he drew lines connecting them, they formed an odd, almost geometric pattern across the city, a sprawling, uneven quadrilateral. It was abstract but undeniable. He remembered Sarah Jenkins's sculptures, Mark Thompson's architectural designs, Emily Carter's precise garden, David Chen's surgical precision. They were all individuals who created, ordered, or imposed structure upon the world. The pieces clicked into place not as professions, but as a shared philosophy, a devotion to order, to creation, to a certain aesthetic. "It's not about who they are, Lena," Thorne rasped to his exhausted partner, gesturing at the map. "It's about what they represent. Order, design, precision. And the killer, he's mirroring that. He's taking their order and imposing his own chaotic, yet perfectly executed, design of death." Petrova's eyes widened. And the thread is a tiny, perfect piece of order. A mockery. The breakthrough, however, came from the most unlikely source. A forgotten microfiche article from a local arts and crafts magazine from 1998, unearthed by Petrova's relentless search for information on unique weaving techniques. It featured a small, independent artisan studio on the outskirts of Portland, specializing in bespoke silk tapestries dyed with rare, organic pigments, renowned for their intricate, almost esoteric designs. The studio was run by a reclusive, brilliant artist named Elias Vance. The article even showed a close-up of Vance's signature, weave an almost identical pattern to the calling card threads. A search of Vance's background revealed a man of immense talent, but also a history of social isolation, increasing paranoia, and a series of bitter disputes with clients who he felt didn't appreciate the purity of his art or dared to suggest changes to his vision. He had a particularly public falling out with a gallery owner who once represented Sarah Jenkins, and had once been vehemently critical of a public art installation designed by Mark Thompson, deeming it a grotesque affront to true aesthetics. Emily Carter had subtly critiqued one of his guest lectures at a local college on artistic integrity, and David Chun, as a renowned surgeon, represented the ultimate precision, a control over life and death that Vance, in his twisted worldview, likely coveted. The pieces coalesced into a horrifying portrait of a man driven by a pathological need for control and a warped sense of artistic superiority. A man who saw the world as a canvas upon which he could impose his own ultimate design. The victims weren't chosen randomly. They were carefully selected, symbols of an order he simultaneously admired and resented, an order he sought to usurp with his own brutal, perfect chaos. The raid on Elias Vance's remote studio was executed with a chilling efficiency that matched the killer's own. Thorne and Petrova led the charge through the driving rain. Inside, the studio was a morbid shrine. Walls were adorned not with tapestries, but with carefully mounted photographs of his victims, each with a red thread woven into the frame. His workbench held an array of custom-made blades and a loom, on which he was meticulously weaving a new, slightly larger tapestry of crimson and black, clearly intended as his next signature. Elias Vance, thin and gaunt, his eyes burning with an intense, almost feverish light, offered no resistance. He looked up from his work, a faint smile playing on his lips, as if relieved to be discovered, as if his masterpiece was finally complete. "You understand now, don't you?" he whispered, his voice surprisingly calm. "The threads, they bind us all. I was simply weaving a new reality, a more beautiful one." The arrest of Elias Vance, the Midnight Weaver, brought a wave of relief that washed over Portland, but it left a deep, unhealing scar. The city had learned that even in its most idyllic corners, darkness could lie in wait, meticulously crafting its next masterpiece. Thorne and Petrova, their faces etched with the strains of the investigation, looked at each other across the interrogation room. The case was closed, but the memory of the chilling precision, the silent terror, and the dark red threads would forever be woven into the tapestry of their lives. A stark reminder of the fragile line between art and madness, creation and destruction. The rain continued to fall, cleansing the city, but never truly washing away the shadow of the weaver.